Hello, YouTube. Are we done, Carl? And y'all probably still can't hear me because of the plane. It's kind of one of the awkward things about working here is planes will be passing directly overhead and somebody will be telling me something and they'll just keep talking. And I absolutely cannot make out what they're saying when it happens. It's like, could you repeat that? Because there was a plane. Anyway, it's Friday, July 21st, 2023, 4:46 p.m. How's it hanging? Wow, there was a Rivian pickup truck. I don't understand why they have to have such weird-looking headlights on those things. At least the headlights on the Jaguar electric car that Waymo uses are pretty normal looking. So I got to drive several electric cars today. That was exciting. I did not look at the Google traffic before I left. This is not a good time of day to be flying without looking at traffic. And it's hot as hell outside. We're on track to have the hottest day of the year today. Although I heard on KTA earlier that it wasn't heating up as fast today as it was yesterday. So maybe not. Wow, Waymo getting on the freeway. I didn't see if that was a robot driver or a human driver, though. Oh, shit. I gotta figure out how these Apple widgets work, because right now they're showing me 3 things. Somehow I went from 2 widgets on my desktop to 3 widgets on my home screen, desktop, whatever it's called in iOS. And somehow I went from 2 to 3, and the one that's usually weather isn't right now. 114 degrees outside right now. And they've backed off the high for today to 115. When I was on my way to work, they were saying 119 for the high today. So yay, it's so much cooler out. Yeah, 115 feels so much better. Wow, and 114 for the next 4 days and 113 for the next 3 days after that. I literally live in hell. And I think I should have turned left there. Yes, I really should have. I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm doing right now, but I think I need to yield to that guy. Phoenix SkyTrain, 24th Street Station. Shows there's parking for that. So I think left here at Copperhead puts me onto either I-10 or Sky Harbor Boulevard. And Copperhead is where 24th Street used to be. God, it's so hot in here, and the air conditioning at this point is borderline useless. So the job was an absolute blast. I do have one supervisor. I forget her name. She's got one of those old white lady names. It's like Mildred or Ethel or something like that. I think I should have took the ramp up to the left. She was a little bit difficult to deal with at the beginning of the shift. So at one point she was just telling us a whole bunch of stuff, and of course, for me, being my first day, it just sounded like blah 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 blah, the this, the that, the blah blah blah. Yeah, that's a lot more than I can remember. I said, can you write that stuff down? She goes, oh, well, it's too much to write. I'm like, well, if it's too much to write, then how do you honestly expect me to remember it? My capacity to write stuff is much greater than my capacity to remember stuff. Oh, wow, this is the old entrance to Terminal 2, but of course Terminal 2 is no longer, so I'm not quite sure where I'm going to end up doing this. Phoenix operations through traffic. That's okay. I'm just taking a scenic tour of the airport, which is what I did on my lunch break. Took the Sky train from the rental car center. It's so weird seeing the Terminal 2 parking garage on the left and just a fence and airplanes on the right where Terminal 2 used to be. And I love the sign directly ahead of me. That's great. It's so informative. Oh, and there's a lane that goes nowhere. I love the sign. To lane to nowhere and sign to nowhere. That was a thoroughfare at one time. Oh, I'm definitely not doing this right. Oh, I am so completely not doing this right. Trying to drive through terminals 3 and 4 just to get out the other side. But I definitely didn't do it right. And right now I'm just hearing George Jetson scream, "Let me off this crazy thing," in my head. This is so chaotic, I just need to focus on it. So I thought I should shut up and focus. Alright, you guys changing lanes. Probably not a great time for me to vlog because as tired as I am right now, and as chaotic as driving through here is right now, I can't really say much of value. Other than, damn, I wish that vehicle in front of me wasn't tailgating the vehicle in front of him so closely. So I got a hell of a great schedule. There's something worth mentioning. "40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Pretty simple. It's earlier than I like being up in the morning, but I don't think it's so early that I can't get up in the morning. That job at Williams-Sonoma that one just kicked my ass. It was just beyond the really long commute. Oh, you see that guy drifting lanes in the truck on the right? I can't blame him. I mean, it's complicated driving through here, and those signs are kind of hard to see, and some of the signs don't give you much warning what lane you need to be in until it's too late. I just never do that kind of crazy lane drifting. If I miss the exit, I just keep going until I figure out a way to get back where I was going, which is more or less what I did to get here. Just glad to be inside a motor vehicle and not outside in the heat walking. So I drove an electric vehicle that I've never heard of today. In fact, I drove several of them. Drove a whole bunch of Tesla Model X's, one Tesla Model 3, the more I use the Teslas, the less I like them. 44th Street North, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, I told a few of my coworkers that my plan is to actually commute here by SkyTrain, and they look at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, Like, this guy train literally gets me 3/4 of the way home from here. And then when I explain where I live, they're just like, that's nuts. I was actually thinking about leaving my car at the Hertz lot and riding the SkyTrain home, and then maybe going back later to get my car, just to kind of get a feeling of how long it takes and whatnot. But it is so goddamn hot. So, yeah, today is not good. Wow, the Saturn air is suddenly blowing really cold. Crank that up and enjoy it. So I was basically working with 3 other drivers, one of whom has been doing this job for a little over a year. The other one's been doing it, he said, since November. And the other one had his first day of training the same day I did, on Wednesday. She looks pregnant. From a distance, she looked like she'd clean up nice, but up close, she looked pregnant. Yikes. Wow, we got Phoenix Fire Department at the Circle K right now. That's never good. And I'm now not driving fast enough for the condenser to give effective air conditioning. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. Although with the fan at low, that feels nice. Sorry, so many thoughts going through my head right now, and they're all just too jumbled for me to make any kind of sensible dialogue out of it. The guy who started the same day I did with training, we were both there for 2 hours, both cut loose at the same time. He worked a full shift yesterday. Although I already feel like I'm ahead of the curve with him as far as understanding what the job is. And I think the problem with him is a language barrier. And I was discussing him with the guy that had been working there over a year. I wish I could remember his name, because that guy's really cool. Actually, both of the guys have been there for a while. Are really, really cool. But I'm definitely like the older guy that's been there over a year a lot better. He had mentioned me, it's like, yeah, he doesn't seem to be getting it. His name is, the other new guy, his name is Emmanuel. And I said, you know, it's probably a language barrier. English is obviously not his first language. He goes, yeah, I was thinking that too. The awkward thing is Spanish is obviously not his first language either, because it's not hard to find somebody to explain something in Phoenix in Spanish. Anyway, he said that he thought he was French. I said it didn't really sound like a French accent to me. I was wrong. Yeah, he's from France. I've heard a French accent before, like French accent in English, and Emmanuel's accent is different than what I've grown to recognize as a French accent. He's a really nice guy too. I definitely like him. Just, you know, there's a definite language barrier with him. I got a feeling this is one of those jobs that I'm going to stay at a whole lot longer than I probably should, because the pay is terrible, and I've heard that they, quote unquote, cracking down on overtime, because apparently somebody was working constantly and racking up a whole bunch of overtime, and I guess he didn't really have permission to do it, or they don't give out overtime. They don't like to pay overtime, which is kind of the complete opposite at Amazon. Like, I think the deal with Amazon, where they got so crazy about 60 hours, and anybody going over 60 hours probably has something to do with some kind of a state labor law. Because even though Arizona is a right-to-work state, and wow, that's awesome. I'm not sure if that was a Miata or a Del Sol, but it just seems so wild to me that cars of that style and era now qualify to have historic vehicle plates. Which means I think I could get a copper historic vehicle plate now for my red CRX. I think it qualifies now. Although, when I start putting together CRXs, I'm definitely going with the silver one first. So did I mention the hat? Oh yeah, I did a whole stupid video segment about the hat that my daughter gave me. Absolutely perfect for work today. I tell you, my work day was significantly better for having this hat. I haven't heard from her since they transported her, and I'm kind of nervous about that because the EMT didn't give me the name of the place. He texted me the address of the place, because I wasn't really given any information about it whatsoever. And that's the awkward thing about me trying to help Allison out as her father. She's an adult. She's 21. She's an adult. So I don't get dad copies of papers. I don't sign nothing. I'm there for whatever I can be there for. I can encourage. I can certainly speak on her behalf if she asks me to, which she has done several times. I was pretty much asleep. I had finally just was unable to stay awake anymore, and I was pretty much asleep at the floor when everything was discussed about where she was going to. And it's still Friday, 5:11 right now, and the car says hi. Shooting video on Obamaphone 3, and it overheated. It's hot as hell today, what can I say? It's not even sunny. That's just ambient heat. Shooting video on this thing, and it overheated. So, unprecedented heat wave going on. Like, we more than shattered the record. They keep saying on the news how many days it's been of high temperatures over 110. I mean, high temperatures over 110 in Phoenix, nothing unusual. High temperatures hitting 120 in Phoenix, a little unusual, but it happens. Oddly enough, we haven't got a day over 120 yet this summer. But yeah, we usually get a handful of those every summer here. But this many days of 110 day after day after day, absolutely unprecedented. So anyway, I was saying before the ridiculous heat overheated Obamaphone 3. I still haven't found Obamaphone 4, by the way. I'm getting kind of concerned about that. I didn't really know anything about where my daughter was going. I'm really glad she signed up for a program and didn't just get kicked out of the hospital again, because it seemed like she was stuck in an endless loop on the streets. Methadone, can't get methadone, whatever junk she can get on the street, to falling apart, to back in an emergency room. Well, your vitals are fine. There's no reason for us to keep you in the hospital. You need to leave. Rinse and repeat. I feel like that loop happened like 5-6 times. Wow, I haven't seen her son in a long time. He's really grown up since the last time I've seen him. He's about the same age as Lily, maybe a little bit younger. Which reminds me, I was going to try to make a sort of surprise appearance at Lily's doctor's appointment today that I had the heads up on. Accidentally had the heads up on from the clinic, but I had to work, so that's all right. I think I got enough information that I will have no trouble finding Lily when I'm ready to, and I'll probably be ready to next week. But at this point in time, my 21-year-old is needing me a whole lot more than my 13-year-old is. So anyway, she's... I get the hell out of this car. It's so hot. I should probably put my sunshade up. So as I was saying, sorry to keep this short, because I really want to get inside and get some air conditioning. It's been a long, hot day. I didn't know where she was going. All I got from the EMT was a street address. So I'm really good at finding addresses. Not only like driving around and finding addresses, but also on a map. I don't need to type in an address on Google Maps. I can just scroll and zoom to the block. That's more natural to me than typing it in. And went right to it to find out that it's, so he had said Community Bridges was the name of the place. And apparently nobody calls it Community Bridges. Everybody just simply calls it CBI. I don't know what the I stands for. But if all the reviews, not, mind you, not some of the reviews, but all of the reviews on Google are to be believed, the I stands for idiots. When I've been talking the last few weeks about seeing transportation vehicles going in and out of the zone, and Allison mentioning that she'd been using those vehicles for transportation, I thought that was a transportation service, something comparable to American Pony Express or possibly Vayo, except Vayo uses contractor vehicles and just magnets on the side, but actual marked cars. or even like AAA medical transport. No, those, and I'm sure I was saying the wrong acronym every time I did, because I struggle with acronyms. It's just 3 letters. I'd rather everybody just use full spoken out, written out names for stuff. Easier for me to remember than acronyms. In fact, at one point when the first counselor came in to talk to Allison, and I forget what time it was pretty early in the morning. Yeah, when he came in to talk to her, he was talking about different types of programs, and one that he mentioned was an RTC. I'm like, yeah, what is that? Sorry, you're losing me with these acronyms. I think it stood for Residential Treatment Center. And I was like, okay. I said, the first thing that came to my mind when you said RTC was Ride to Church, and I figured she could probably use that. And he got a bit of a laugh out of that. Which reminds me, some work related recently. I read somewhere that if I saw something, I needed to report it to ICP, and I'm like, why would I report this to the Insane Clown Posse? That doesn't seem right. And of course, the big running joke that I started right now over at MLS, the subcontractor I'm working for, is what is PMS? Oh, that's PMS. What's that one leader's problem? Oh, it's probably PMS. Because there's these signs on so I'm working as what they call a maintenance driver, and primarily moving vehicles that need to go to get some kind of maintenance. And the sign, it's like, that's not PMS, it's PMs. PM as an abbreviation, because I'm just not a fan of acronyms. PM being an acronym for preventative maintenance, which an oil change is probably the most basic preventative maintenance that a car gets, or should get. If you neglect that, you won't have a running car for all that long. Yeah, I see you, Sambo. I'll feed you when I'm damn ready to. Never mind my cat. He's kind of demanding. So, it's not unusual to use the phrase PMs to refer to all the different preventative maintenance things that are done to a car. Time to get your PMs on your car. That's a phrase frequently used in the taxi industry. So, what? I'm not going in there. I see you in there too, Sheba. What did you say? You got something to say to me, cat? What? And then what? He is so demanding. Okay. So 78. That shit is going down to 75. It's been so hot out on the yard today. And usually when it's written out, it'll be a capital P and a period, a capital M and a period, followed by a lowercase s. PMs. But the sign that they have in the Hertz maintenance yard, or the MLS maintenance yard, I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, I think it's Hertz maintenance yard, and it's just merely staffed by MLS. The sign says PMS. I definitely need to take a picture of it. I'm going to keep calling it PMS until they change that sign. Sambo is walking on me and talking a whole bunch of shit. You ain't starving. I gave you a bowl full of kibble before I left. Listen to him, you'd think I haven't fed him in days. So anyway, so I didn't know exactly where she was going. When I got home, actually not even when I got home, but after when I got home, I pretty much just collapsed and just crashed out. I was just so absolutely exhausted. After I left the hospital, I went directly to MLS, where I'm working at, because I wanted to touch base with the management there, because I had texted the one, and I'm forgetting her name already. So as I mentioned, there's 2 absolutely gorgeous black women that work in the management office or HR office, whatever you want to call it, for MLS. And the one I thought was training to be a driver, the one I mentioned the other day that was wearing
wearing tight jeans that were kind of ripped out and showing a lot of skin. And the other one's got a bit of a speech impediment. I'm thinking she might have some kind of hearing loss. It's kind of cute. I find it cute. But anyway, they're both freaking gorgeous, and they're both probably like half my age or younger. But anyway, she's the one that called me when I was on my way in to get breakfast on Tuesday morning, I think it was. And when I left after training, I was working on using so they use a subcontractor for their payroll and benefits and all of that kind of shit. That's all done through a third party, through an app. So all the onboarding, the I-9, all that kind of stuff, tax forms were all done through this. It was supposed to be done through a website, but the website absolutely didn't work on my phone. And then when I called, and of course, the people I'm actually working for are just like, yeah, there's a 1-800 number and you can call those people and they'll walk you through it. And they ended up, like, she sent me an email with some directions and it pretty much recommended that I use the app if I was using a mobile phone versus trying to use a web browser. And that if I used a web browser to use Chrome. I don't have Chrome installed on my iPhone. I have serious space issues on my iPhone. So as a general rule on my iPhone, if the website doesn't work in Safari, I'm not using it. So anyway, I did all that with the app. So I was I want to say maybe about 2/3 finished with it. And I was down to, there's no Wi-Fi there. So I'm using my own data, which is oftentimes slow with Mint. And then my battery was down to 2% and I didn't bring a charger or a charging cable. And at one point I walked up to her and I was just like, yeah, this is where I'm at on the progress bar for the app. And that's where my battery percentage is. I said, I got a feeling it's going to die before I get this done. And she's like, well, that's fine. Just go ahead and go home, plug in your phone, get on your Wi-Fi and finish it, and then call me when you're done. I know I've complained about other people doing this when I've told them to call me, but I texted her instead of calling her. Just because, I don't know, it seemed like a more sensible thing to do, but I guess it threw her off. She didn't even notice the text. Yeah, I texted her, and then I texted her an image of the last screen that I hit on the HR app that suggested I was finished. I forget exactly what it said. So when I popped in after I came in from the hospital, she's like, hey, you were supposed to call me. And I'm like, well, I texted you a screenshot of the app just to know if that was correct. She's like, oh, I didn't even see that. And then she looked at her phone. She goes, oh, yeah, next time call me. And I'm like, okay. I don't know. I just find phone calls intrusive, whereas text messages and picture messages, like I can look at those at my convenience and follow up on them as quick as I can. Oh, speaking of texts, I finally heard back from Marissa from Pro Logistics. She was super apologetic. That was a little on the awkward side too, because she's trying to say that she had communications with me that she most certainly didn't have. And then she said, like, she'd called my phone and it went directly to voicemail. I don't know what the problem is. I'm like, well, that's one of three things. Either my battery was dead, or my phone was off, or I was in an area where I wasn't receiving service. I said, that happens a lot. And I said, I'm doing warehouse work through an app, and I think I told her Wonolo. I might have told her it was Wonolo. I said, when I'm located in many of those warehouses, I don't have any cell phone service. And even if I did, I'm not allowed to answer my phone while I'm working. I said, I have no idea how to use my voicemail. So best way to reach me is, as I told you before, and I told her this. I told her this when I was face-to-face with her. Both times I was face-to-face with her, I told her, I'm very difficult to reach with a phone call. You need to either text me or email me. Yeah, she said that this job that she had totally lined up for me, that I was allegedly hired for, is now not returning her. Like, she's contacting them about it and they're not responding to her, which is pretty much the same story that I got from that other recruiter, the one who sounded like a robot with an Asian accent and had a funny name. So, yeah, 2 warehouse jobs in a row that I was supposedly hired, and it was a done deal. That's happened to. And I'm absolutely convinced Marissa can find me another job. I am, but at this point I've got 2 jobs. And as I was saying, MLS, I got a feeling where I work today, this will be one of those jobs that I probably should quit because the pay isn't what I need it to be. But I'm probably going to stick around because I absolutely love the job. basically, I'm just moving around rental cars all day long, taking them from point A to point B, and there's several different point A's and there's several different point B's, and reading little cryptic messages written on the side of the window with markers. And I could go on at length try to explain it, but there's really no point. But yeah, just moving cars around and looking for cars that need moved around. And I don't think I've driven a brand new car, or like a late model car, in probably 6 years. So like the last few cars that I've rented from Turo, and I'm usually deliberately renting older cars that people have up for rent because they're much cheaper than renting new cars, and I'm quite content driving them. So on that note, I don't think up until today, I don't think I've ever driven a car that was manufactured after probably 2017, I'm guessing. In fact, I think that probably the newest vehicle I've driven is probably my mother's van. She's got a Honda Odyssey, and I'm not sure what year it is, but I'm thinking 2018, 2019, something like that. Prior to that, probably the newest car I'd driven was her Kia Forte. But anyway, so I'm driving a lot of new vehicles, and I've never driven a fully electric vehicle before today. And as I mentioned earlier, I drove several Tesla Model S's and one Tesla Model 3. That's got to be one of the ugliest dashboards I've ever seen in any kind of car ever. And another kind of electric car I'd never heard of before, I think it's called Polestar or Polestar, something like that. I may have to Google that. And if I'm wrong, I'll try to correct myself in a later video. But those cars are neat. Now, they're awkward to drive, but I think the more I drive them, the more comfortable I'm getting with them. But definitely, I find them a lot more. Now, the acceleration and the regenerative braking is a lot different than a Tesla. And I can't help but think that there's probably a setting in it where you can set how strong the regenerative, I'm not saying that right, regenerative braking is. I'm sure there's got to be a setting somewhere in the control panel on the touch screen where you can set how high it is. And I got the feeling that they're by default or by somebody set at the highest setting. Yeah, and my reason for thinking that is most of my electric scooters, not my Xiaomi, but my Ninebot scooters, there's an app that goes with them. And I can go into the app and change the setting for how strong the regenerative, why can't I say that word? Regenerative, I can't say that. The regen brake. I can basically how that works in an electric vehicle is you set how strong, when you let off the acceleration on your electric motor, it turns into an electric generator. And that setting controls how strongly it works for generating, which also functions as a brake. So when it's on the highest setting, as soon as you let off the accelerator, it generates electricity, but it also functionally acts as if you're hitting a brake, even though you're not hitting a brake. And yeah, I've tried the high setting on my Ninebot scooters, and I found it absolutely jarring. It seemed like every time I'd let off the accelerator, it would brake so hard that I nearly flipped over the scooter. I ended up setting it on the medium setting, and that was a little bit more than I'm used to. And what I'm used to is basically how a Lime 2.0. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if Lime 2.0s have regen braking on it. I believe they do, because it seems like I've coasted and managed to get the battery level to come up going down hills, which would suggest regen braking. Because whenever you're doing that, you're also generating electricity, which puts more electricity into the battery and raises your battery percentage. But yeah, the Ninebot on the medium setting, I found that is a little more than I'm used to, but I got used to it pretty quick. But on the highest setting, it was jarring. So anyway, back to these Polestar electric cars. Yeah, I think there's most likely an adjustment in it, but I feel like they're probably at the highest setting, because as soon as you take your foot off the accelerator, it feels like you've nearly slammed on the brakes. So for me, being used to driving a 2006 Saturn SL, not Saturn SL, sorry, Saturn Ion. My first Saturn was an SL. Generally speaking, when I'm wanting to maintain a rate of speed, I'm up to the rate of speed, I generally take my foot off the gas and I just sort of coast and just sort of tap the gas pedal to maintain my speed. Well, as soon as I did this with those Polestars, it felt as if I'd slammed on the brakes. And I had my seatbelt on, but yeah, I kind of felt like I was trying to launch myself through the windshield. Now I'm getting accustomed to how those drive, and I'm getting used to it, but as far as like the controls and the stuff on the touch screen, and then there's some tactile controls, whereas it seems like the Tesla's just everything's just awkward layers of shit on the touch screen. The amount of bullshit and button presses and scrolling and shit that you have to do to shut the Tesla off is absolutely ridiculous. Whereas the Polestar, all you do is just park it and then step out of it and close the door, and it shuts itself off. But yeah, when I went through, I told one of the other drivers, I'm like, yeah, is the French guy, he had driven a Tesla and he stepped out of it and he's like, hey, do you guys know how to turn this off? Or does it turn itself off? And I'm like, I know how to turn it off. And the one guy's like, oh, okay, you want to show him? I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I walked in, and maybe I probably didn't do a good job of showing him. I think I just sat in the passenger seat and flew through it, as opposed to actually showing him and teaching him. I'm not a good teacher, and I'm aware of that. If he was watching closely, he would have seen what I did. But I think the only thing I really guided him on was, oh, you got to hit that button, that icon first. It's not even a labeled button. It's an icon in the lower left-hand corner of the touchscreen that is shaped like a car. Like, who would even think that that's where you hit to try to get to you go from there to this menu that, and then, of course, the Mildred or whatever the hell her name is, when I called her on the phone and I asked her, it's like, hey, how do I shut off this Tesla? And she's like, oh, there's a text menu on the left side of the screen. There was not a text menu at the left side of the screen. She didn't tell me I had to hit the little icon that looked like a car to get to that text menu. And when it showed up, it wasn't on the left side of the screen. It was dead center in the screen. Yeah, that woman gives terrible directions. First thing she asked me to do was to move a sole. Can you just move that sole into, she calls it the kick out. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then I walk and I go through the line of cars and stuff, and I walk back and I'm like, what soul are you talking about? And she goes, oh, here, I'll walk you over to it. And it was a Jeep Expedition. She's like, oh, well, from there I thought it was a Kia Soul. And I'm like, well, why didn't you just say white SUV? I'm looking like, how am I supposed to know that she means Jeep Expedition when she says Soul? Anyway, yeah, that woman gives terrible directions. But yeah, the text menu that comes up in the Tesla, it's in the center of the screen, and I've got to scroll. I don't know if I have to scroll down that one. But it's not towards the top of the menu. It's quite a ways down. You click on the word safety, and then it brings up like this crazy menu and options. It looks like something from Windows on the right side of the screen. And then you scroll all the way to the bottom of that. And there's a little, I say button. It's like an app for a tablet. But, like a area to touch on the screen, virtual button, scroll wherever. It says shut off car, and then when you hit that, it gives you a pop-up of like, are you sure? Which is so Windows-esque. It kind of reminds me of when Windows 95 first came out. So how do you turn off the computer? Oh, you click start. So to end my session on the computer, I click start to end. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, the whole routine of shutting off the Saturn I found it kind of reminiscent of that. And when I got back after I shut it off for Emmanuel, I got back in the car and said to the other guy, I'm like, yeah, it's moments like that I'm reminded that Elon Musk is a pothead. But those Polestars, oh my God, super neat cars. Thoroughly enjoy driving those, and I will get used to that heavy regenerative braking. And at some point, I might even, if I got enough hang time, I might search through the menu on the touchscreen and see if I can adjust the setting on it. Not that it makes a difference. I'm not driving any of these cars a distance great enough for anything to matter. Now, what's kind of become my favorite thing to do with the cars is seeing if I can quickly figure out just how to get music on. On some cars, I haven't been able to, because it's not as simple as just turning the knob on the left and turning it up. It's all so many touchscreens and so many physical buttons that interact with touchscreens, and then random cryptically coded buttons on center consoles and on steering wheels. And it kills me that none of this shit is standardized. Like, personally, I would like to see federal legislation making touchscreens in cars illegal. And speaking of touchscreens in cars, there's a bunch of cars that, mostly Japanese cars, that when you start them, puts text on the touchscreen that says not to look at the touchscreen while you're driving. Right. But everything to control the car is on the touchscreen. So how's that supposed to work? I'm glad that my Saturn was made. All my cars, in fact, my newest car is my Saturn. It's a 2006. That it was made long before that sort of shit was put into cars, and all the buttons and knobs and everything are completely tactile, physical knobs and switches and buttons that don't require me to look at a screen. But look at a screen that when I started the car told me not to look at it. I don't know. It just seems completely absurd. But generally speaking, I don't mess with trying to figure out how to tune in a station, because I'm not driving any of those cars long enough to do that. But I am driving the cars long enough to generally, not all of them. Some of my jobs, I'm not in them long enough to figure out. Like, if it takes more than 2 or 3 button presses, then fuck it. I don't have time for that shit. I've got cars to move. But if I can quickly find how to get the radio, how to get it to radio, and sometimes it goes to FM and sometimes it goes to XM. I just listen to whatever station it was on, whatever station it lands on. So I'm listening to all kinds of music throughout the day, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. In fact, a couple of times it came up on different types of Spanish music, and I'm like, I can hang with this for the next, 2 minutes, minute and a half, however long I'm going to be driving this car. Because, sometimes I'm literally driving the car like 20 seconds. On those ones, I don't even bother to get music on. But when I'm driving it from, say the Hertz floor, which is the entire third floor of the rental car center, especially if I'm going from what they call the dollar area. So Hertz has 2 budget brands, which is not to be confused with Budget Rent-A-Car. That's a different company. And one of them is Dollar, and the other one, Thrifty. Dollar and Thrifty. Yeah, so the younger black driver, the guy that's been working there since November, he said, and I forget his name, I think it's Deshaun. He said, we're going to go check DT. I'm like, oh, the DTs. He goes, yeah, the DTs. And I'm like, what does that stand for? I said, because when I hear the DTs, I'm just imagining somebody going through heavy drug withdrawal. He looked at me real funny. Acronyms are fun. Almost any acronym you use has already been used for something else. And I forget what it is I need to report to Insane Clown Posse. But anyway. But yeah, I asked him what DT stand for, and he says, oh, it's the other brand's Dollar and Thrifty. So at least I can remember the DTs and think of somebody like shaking, going through withdrawal in a bathtub, and then remember that stands for Dollar and Thrifty. So, because yeah, those are both budget brands that are owned by Hertz. So I'm functionally working for Hertz, even though I'm not working for Hertz. I'm working for MLS, which is really funny because the whole reason that I went back and talked to MLS was because I had the interview at Hertz. And when I walked out and walked to the car, I was thinking, well, MLS's office is right there across the parking lot. I'm not going out of my way. It's going to take a grand total of maybe 10 minutes more time than what I've already invested. I've already taken the time to get here. I've already used the gas to get here. Fuck it, may as well walk over there and try to talk to them again. The worst they could tell me is no. And I'm pretty sure that the fact that I walked over there when I did is the whole reason I got the job. I kind of got the feeling when I talked to the gorgeous black woman with the speech impediment. I'm pretty sure that's who I talked to that day. That she had stated that the reason that they never called me back was because I had specifically asked to be, there's a day shift, there's a night shift, and then there's a late night shift. And I had specifically asked to be on the late night shift. And they didn't need any more people on the late night shift. So that's why they didn't call back. And I'm like, oh, well, you should have called and told me. So I'll work any shift. I need to work. I need a job. You asked what my preference is. That's my preference. So yeah, had I not come and clarified that, I don't think I would have ever heard back from them. So it's kind of funny. Like I never have heard back, and I never have heard back from Hertz, but the timeline I was kind of given with Hertz was like I made it sound like it would be quite a while till I heard back from them anyway, until I started, and even longer till I got a paycheck. So I think it's going to be really funny if I do actually hear from Hertz and they're wanting to hire me, because I feel like at this point I've already got a better job on the premises, kind of working for Hertz. In fact, I think I saw the guy that I had the interview with a couple times today, but it was long enough. I don't not 100% certain on that. But yeah, there's 2 car washes on the premises, and there's one that all the Hertz, all the cars that are rented out as Hertz vehicles, which is actually operated by MLS and the people that I work with. And then the one that's actually operated by Hertz is in a different location, and that one's only used for the Dollar and Thrifty cars. And that's one of the areas that I go down to. And that's a bit of a drive to go there, because there's this ramp that is used specifically by Hertz. I'm getting a phone call on the iPhone. I may be back to explain this, maybe not. Thanks for watching.